Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to Other Minds and Hands. This is episode number 112, and Maggie and I are joined today by a special guest from our Signum community, Bradley Bethel. Bradley, good to see you today.
Wonderful to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
We're glad to have you.
Yeah, so Bradley is the director of a new film project himself, which has an interesting connection with Tolkien adaptation that we wanted to kind of talk through a little bit today. So, Bradley, tell us a little bit about your film.
Yeah, the film is called Ranger of the North, and in the film, we follow a retiring national park ranger, Peter Christian, into the Alaskan wilderness as he looks back to Lord of the Rings as a novel that inspired him to become a ranger and searches for hope in the face of climate change. And so the idea, by the way, Peter and I met in a Signum class.
Nice.
I feel like we got to mention that. We met in it was Verlin Flieger's World of Middle Earth.
World of Middle Earth, yeah.
And so the idea for the film, what I wanted to do was I really wanted to get into the mind of somebody whose worldview has been shaped by Tolkien, and kind of look at the world through their worldview, through their mind.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm obviously I'm a filmmaker, but my full-time job is actually high school English teacher, and I tell students that literature has the power to change your life. And I decided I wanted to make a film that shows that, and Ranger of the North is it, Yeah.
Cool.
Neat.
So Corey and I have cheated. We have seen the whole thing.
Yes.
That's
We will
great.
try to not give any spoilers.
I
or
like,
anything.
instead of cheating, I like to think of it as being privileged to be part of an early screening of The Ranger of the North.
That's a very nice way to phrase it. And we do have a clip from that we'll share later, but like I was just excited about this because it's just such a different way to look at the concept of adaptation. Like, you're not taking a specific story and putting it on screen. You're taking the essence of something and the inspiration of something and someone that took it into their real life. So I love hearing that you met in a class. Could you walk us through like some of the early days of like, you met in a class, you started a conversation. How did it get from that meeting on an online course to working together on a feature film?
Yeah, that's a great question, because it wasn't like automatic. We took the class, and then it wasn't until a year and a half later that I got the idea for the film. But one of the things that stuck out to me about Peter that I never forgot was from the first day of class when we did intros, and he explained that one of his reasons for taking the class is specifically because he wanted to explore Tolkien's ideas about hope, specifically because he's searching for hope in his own life, hope in the face of climate change. As a ranger, he sees firsthand, and especially as a ranger in Alaska, because Alaska has seen climate change in ways that not the lower 48 and other parts of the world haven't seen as up close and as tangible as he has. So he's searching for hope and looking to Tolkien to find that hope, or to provide a guide for hope. And so it was about a year and a half after the class, I realized I wanted to make this kind of film. That I wanted to, in a way, it's for my students. In a way, it's to like show my students I mean it when I tell them literature has the power to change your life. And so I said, well, I gotta make a film specifically about Lord of the Rings because that's my thing. And Peter immediately came to mind. And so but I had to find him then because it'd been a year and a half, and so I sent him an email with a Signum email, and he didn't respond. So I had to Google him, and
Do
I
some
ended up
stalking,
yeah, basically I had to internet
Yeah.
stalking, right? And I was
Excellent.
able to finally find his national park email, like at the bottom of some obscure document.
Right.
And so I emailed him there and say, hey, I don't even know if you remember me. It's been a year and a half, but I want to do a documentary about you. And so he responded, and he's intrigued and said, let's meet over Zoom, let's chat. And so we chatted, and and he was into it, and we started planning from there. And we planned for about a year and a half or so.
Okay, see, that's way too broad. I'm like, no, you say plan. Now, what do you mean plan? Like, did you
Yeah.
start with like rough outline, bullet points, storyboard, script? Like, where did you go to start to build this idea?
Okay, yeah, thank you. So my idea from the
Like, you
very
can't get by that easy.
yeah,
No.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm glad you're pushing me. That you're a good interviewer by pushing me.
When it's about
Um,
production, yeah.
yeah. Well, I guess I need to back up and get back to what my vision for the film was. Is I from the very beginning I didn't want to make what some people would consider a traditional documentary that was kind of interview focused. What I wanted to do is I wanted to get us immersed in the wilderness, and in kind of on a journey. Also to kind of emulate the Lord of the Rings itself, as a journey, as a quest. And so we had to decide, like, what is our quest? What is our journey going to be? And Peter said, well, we should go all the way up to the Arctic Ocean, because there is the largest oil field in North America is up there. And it's sort of like, it's kind of like a quest to Mordor. All right. We're going to this oil field. And so that's perfect. That gives us a destination. It gives us a point that we're heading toward. And so what I wanted to do was just be immersed in the wilderness with Peter and follow him on this journey. And my plan then all along was, instead of interviewing him along the way, what we would film it, and then he and I would collaborate afterwards to kind of construct his sort of inner monologue, narrating the journey that we took. And so planning the trip itself, really the thing that took so long is just because it's Alaska and I'm in North Carolina, and it's expensive to get to Alaska. And so part of it was getting the money to do it, and just making sure we had the team in place.
And that the season was right and you had enough.
Yeah, that's right. Well, and it's funny you mentioned that too, because I had this idea, like, well, what if we go in like the winter when there's snow? And Peter just said, we would die. Like, you can't go to the Arctic all the way in the winter. There's feet of snow to get there. It would be like the scene on Caradras Mountain,
Right.
when they're like trying to get through the snow. Like, we can't
leave it
do
to
that.
a park ranger to be like, no.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we had to do it in summer, which works better for me because I'm a teacher. So I, better during the summer when I have school off anyways. So then we were able to figure it out. August 2024 is when so it wasn't this past summer, but the summer before. And so we planned this 2 week, rather, it was a 2 week trip between Fairbanks and Prudhoe Bay, the Arctic Ocean. And we got the team together, and it was Peter and me. My filmmaking partner, his name's Ned Phillips. He's our cinematographer. We had a sound recordist, our friend and collaborator, Nick Wallhauser is his name. He was our sound recordist and our drone photographer. We've got some great drone cinematography in the film. And then about 2 weeks before we left, I brought in my friend Stuart Muller to be a producer, which was a great move. Stuart's also connected with Signum. He's been to some Moots. He's taken some space classes.
Gotten to meet Stuart. I had the fun experience of getting to meet Stuart in 2 consecutive weeks. First in Seattle and then in Stuttgart, Germany, as he attended both of those Moots back to back.
And that is the kind of guy Stuart is, right?
Right.
Because you're probably the only person, or Stuart is probably the only person besides you who has traveled to such far away
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's Stuart. Stuart is brilliant. He had never worked on a film before, but I knew he'd be great because he's a genius. He's got a PhD in environmental engineering. he's a film lover, and he's a Tolkien enthusiast. And so 2 weeks before, I said, Stuart, you want to be a producer on this film? He said yes. And so then there we were a couple weeks later, all of us. And Peter and I had never met in person. Stuart and I had never met in person. It was kind of a risk, throwing us all together into the wilderness for 2 weeks together, but it was great. I mean, we came together like the fellowship, and we became a fellowship in the process.
I think Stuart's here.
He is, yes. Stuart's here with us on Twitch. Yeah, he's
oh, great. Yes, hi, Stuart.
He was coming on Twitch. Hey, Stuart.
Nice. Yeah, and I mean, so we spent the 2 weeks in Alaska. We went from Fairbanks. Well, I mean, actually, we started in Anchorage because Peter lives near Anchorage. But the main filming was between Fairbanks and Prudhoe Bay. There's one road north of Fairbanks is like in the middle of Alaska, and then there's one road north that goes north from Fairbanks for about 450 miles.
Wow.
And it's and there are no roads that cross it. There are no towns really. There are 2 truck stops and a sort of village with about 30 people who are like hardcore survivalists. So it's really isolated. In the road itself, even most of it's not paved, and so it really is isolated. I've been to some beautiful places before, but I've never been somewhere where it's so isolated as where we were in Alaska. And I mean, it was just stunning and awe-inspiring. And so we took our time going up, and again, the final destination was up in Prudhoe Bay on the Arctic Ocean, and it was just I mean, it was life-changing for all of us, and we hope that the film captures some of that awe and beauty, and that we can provide that for viewers. And so that was the main trip. We did go back once this summer. We went in June for some pickup shots, and then we finished the film over the summer.
Nice.
It is awesome. Well, it was so exciting to be able to see. I heard you speak about it beforehand when it was still in production, and it was so exciting to get to see. I just saw it, a week ago at Cascade Moot, out in Vancouver, which was just delightful to be able to do. So, let's talk a little bit more about the adaptation element of it, because one of the things that's interesting about this project, right, is that there's like a bunch of different sort of levels going on that have been apparent in what you've been talking about already. Levels, I mean, because like it's, so in like a normal adaptation, right, like a book to film adaptation, you've got this sort of like clear, direct, and obvious relationship between the book and between the book and the film, right? And this one is in one sense at one level removed, right? I mean, you said your special interest here when you began was to show how to do a film about how a book has influenced the life of a person, right? So It's still like the film and the book are still very much connected with each other, but that it's kind of in one sense one level removed perhaps, but also you yourself as you also said, were motivated, like you didn't want to just show someone influenced by any book. You wanted to show someone influenced by the Lord of the Rings. So your own relationship with the Lord of the Rings was one of the things that was inspiring you as well. And so therefore that connection is even a little bit more direct. I would love to hear you talk about how the Lord of the Rings kind of itself not just how it impacted Peter, because like sort of the film is sort of about how it impacted Peter, right? But how it influenced you in your filmmaking, and like even to like the details of your filmmaking, things like shot choice and I mean you already alluded to how having a journey being involved, this sort of implicit parallel, right, with elements of the book is one of the things that fueled your own ideas. So I just love to hear you talk more about the relationship between the film and the Lord of the Rings in that way.
Yeah, there are a couple ways in which that relationship or connection manifests, and some kind of minor things, but like that affected shots. There are some moments in the film where we very deliberately use sort of subtle visual allusions, even to the Lord of the Rings, but to Peter Jackson's adaptations, that I hope like fans will catch.
Yeah.
I noticed a couple.
Yeah.
I knew you would,
Clock
yeah.
those.
Yeah, but then in a more general sense, but I think is really the core of what we were trying to do. I mean, I really believe that when you I think Lord of the Rings is really interesting as a phenomenon, because there's this in between fandom and sort of religiosity that exists with Lord of the Rings enthusiasts, right? Like we're different than Star Wars fans, I think. And I like Star Wars, but I think that
we have a sacred text.
yeah, it is, exactly.
Yeah.
It is like a sacred text insofar as it really gives us metaphors through which we understand the world. We when we see the world, we see it through a Lord of the Rings lens, or a Tolkien lens,
Right.
And
I've often seen that.
One of the things that I was trying to do, one of the things that I think any documentary filmmaker needs to do, is be faithful to their subject's perspective while also including the filmmaker's perspective. Now, it works really well in this case because Peter and I, both being, Lord of the Rings enthusiasts, like our perspectives overlap really well. But there are still things that are like very much him, and then there's like decisions I made as a filmmaker. Sometimes it was a particular, like, the way we decided to shoot a scene. A lot of it came through in the writing, and I guess I'll talk about the writing. This is a good opportunity to talk about the writing, which is really fun. I just loved the writing process. Peter and I collaborated, like I said, and the idea was that we would collaborate to kind of capture his inner monologue, and that would narrate. So the film, we never see him looking at the camera, talking to
and speaking.
camera.
Yeah.
It's entirely voiceover narration. And so what I did, well, I guess I should back up a little bit. In our post-production process, we started, Ned, who I mentioned, he's my cinematographer and editor and producing partner. He edited what's called an assembly cut. He took all our footage. I don't remember how many hours we had, maybe 10 hours of footage, because we were when we shot, like we were pretty focused on what we needed. So we didn't have to just like shoot all day for 2 weeks. Like we were pretty focused, but we knew we were making a short film, so we still had to take 10 or so hours down to 30 minutes,
Right.
So an assembly cut is he took the 10 hours and got it down to like an hour and a half or 2 hours. And then we spent some time saying, all right, well, like, what is the visual story that we have available here? And we kept getting it down and down and down to 30 some minutes eventually. And then we showed that to Peter once we got down to a 30 some minute version. And then I asked Peter to start, I gave Peter some prompts and kind of just asked him to start responding to the visuals. And so he wrote, and Peter's a great writer. One of the great things is what made it so easy is Peter's a great writer. And so Peter wrote a whole bunch. And then I took what he wrote and I had to edit it down a lot. But then there are other parts where I needed to add parts. But what was really fun is what I did when I was adding parts is I took a whole bunch of other stuff that Peter wrote, some of what he wrote for this class that we took at Signum, stuff he's written for other Tolkien related stuff and other prompts that I've given, and I tried to get into Peter's mind. So I was like trying to get in Peter's mind, being in Tolkien's mind, and so then we collaborated to get the narration down, and the whole time the idea was to like what metaphors, what concepts, what terms can we use from Tolkien, from the Lord of the Rings itself? What quotes can we use to guide us along this journey? What naturally comes to our minds? There's one scene in particular where it's like, well, we need a Gandalf quote here. I know that. The challenging thing about needing a Gandalf quote is he has so many great quotes.
Yes.
Right? There's like so many things you could talk about from Gandalf. But so it's things like that. And it was constantly like he and I are constantly going back to Tolkien to capture that idea of like, what does it look like to see the world through a mind that has been shaped by Tolkien?
And I'm also kind of picturing you guys like in a cabin in the evening after the shoot's wrapped, just reading it out loud to each other with like whiskey or hot chocolate in your hand. You know, it just
There was some whiskey for sure. Yeah.
it felt like that kind of vibe.
Yeah.
There was some communing happening off camera that I think
Oh.
bled into the on camera.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was some in-person stuff, and then of course like there was also a bunch of stuff virtually, and you know, and the writing process took months really, and so like it was, you know, him writing, me editing, offering some other solutions, and then when we got together again this summer in June, it was some of what you're describing, hanging out. He has this great kind of log cabin style house on this mountain about 45 minutes outside of Anchorage with this view of the mountains that's extraordinary. And so hanging out there, drinking some whiskey, reading Tolkien, and then trying to get the words right for the narration. And yeah, it's going back to Tolkien. I mean, I'm reminded there's a part in the appendices to the Lord of the Rings films where they all talk about, like Peter Jackson and some of the other producers and writers, like they describe the same thing. Like they were constantly rewriting the script, but I forget which one of them says it, that the closer we got to Tolkien, we knew the better we were, or something like that. And so this is a little bit different because it's not actually an adaptation. It is a capturing of somebody's real life thinking, you know. But again, the reality is their real life thinking is Tolkien inspired.
Yeah,
So,
well, and that's to me the interesting thing, right? Because it's one thing. So one of the things that I find really interesting from like the kind of interpretive occasion that this is, right? When people read a book, and it affects them in some way, right? They have some kind of reaction to it. Like they are, you know, that book begins to kind of influence them and influence how they think. And that's often very personal, right? And that's the kind of thing, like some people, when they talk, you know, when I'm doing interpretation, right, when I'm teaching class and stuff like that, people be like, oh, like, you know, no interpretation is right or wrong. And I'll be like, oh, no, actually, some are wrong. Like that's possible, right? Like it's that I don't agree that it's, however, but when you're talking about that sort of thing, right? Like I read this book and it influenced me and it makes me think in these ways and this is what it means to me. Like that can't be wrong. Like it can mean to you whatever you want it to mean.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I can tell you, like, I don't think that your ideas are really rooted in the text, but they're still your ideas. Like nobody can disagree with that, right? And yet, so on the one hand, what you're depicting, right? As a filmmaker who's trying, as you said, to be faithful to the point of view of your primary subject, right? You're trying to be faithful to his very individual, you know, sort of reactions and thoughts about the Lord of the Rings, which cannot be wrong. And yet, by making a film on that, which is therefore then offering that to the public, you kind of put it back in a sense into the more public domain, like where like nobody could go to Peter and be like, dude, the way you think about the Lord of the Rings is totally wrong. He can think about it however he wants, right? And yet, like for you as filmmaker, there's a different kind of relationship that you have, because anyway, so I find this a really kind of interestingly complex kind of interpretive relationship in that way.
Yeah, and like a mind path, right? Like one influences the other, which influences the other, which influences. It's like finding the way that works. It's fun to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's it's what I love about good documentary film. I think documentary film provides a lot more opportunity for artistry than I
Hmm.
think sometimes people think about when they think
Yes.
documentary. You
Yes.
Hmm.
know, documentary film is still film and therefore a work of art. And it's not the same as narrative or fictional film. There is an overlap. There can
Sure.
be an overlap between documentary and other forms of nonfiction, but documentary it's nonfiction, but it's nonfiction art,
Hmm.
and it's an opportunity to explore these complexities in I think really interesting ways that I love. That I
Yes.
love. And I'll tell you one other thing that in how connecting this whole process to Tolkien um, is I love on fairy stories, and and I continue to I continue to want on fairy stories to shape my thinking also.
Right.
You know, not just
Right.
Lord of the Rings, but on fairy stories. And one of the ways that it connects here is in on fairy stories, Tolkien talks about how fairy stories um, provide fantasy, recovery, consolation, escape.
Hmm.
And there's a connection in that way between fairy stories and nature. I very much also see nature as providing uh, escape, recovery, and consolation.
Hmm.
Um, but also, I love in on fairy stories. One of the things Tolkien says is that when we go into fairy, or when we go into a fairy story, and um, we experience fairy, we experience the trees and the elements and the weather and the creatures of fairy, that the recovery that it gives us is it helps us recovery a fresh view of the primary world
Hmm.
when we go back to the primary world,
Hmm.
Hmm.
right? And so what I wanted to do with the film is say, okay, we have spent this time in Lord of the Rings, you know, in fairy that Lord of the Rings provides. Now let's take that into nature. In the film, we go out into the wilderness. And now let's look at the wilderness with this recovered sense, this recovered, fresh perspective that Lord of the Rings has given us, and see what that does for us. And then at the same time, it kind of works conversely also, is by bringing viewers into nature and into the wilderness. I'm hoping that they'll also take that experience back with them to the Lord of the Rings,
Hmm.
and that they'll see Lord of the Rings in an interesting way, in a new way also.
Hmm.
Um, and and so yeah, that connection between Tolkien's ideas of recovery, consolation, escape, those are very much at the forefront of my mind. And we there's even some allusions to on fairy stories in the film itself. I about a week or so ago, I went through the film and to say like how many references and allusions to Tolkien do I have, and I just
Yeah.
did it really quickly. And the film's 30 minutes, and I did a quick count of about 30 um, references and allusions. But then the next day, I was reading Unfinished Tales, the section on uh, Huor, and something in that reminded me of another allusion that I forgot. So I've even like forgotten allusions and
Right.
references that I put in the film, and I've even had some viewers like point out things that I didn't even intend, as far as allusions and
Hmm.
references
Hmm.
I think every
to
filmmaker would
Tolkien.
say that because you're so influenced by everything that came before. Of course, it's going to sneak its way in
Yeah,
there.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it
yeah,
becomes a little
exactly.
scavenger hunt of what was I inspired by, when, and where.
And as you
Yeah,
imply, any work of art gains a kind of life of its own, and it is more
Hmm.
than just the sum of all the things that you intended when you put it
yeah,
together.
yeah,
You
yeah,
want to actually watch a clip of this? We've been talking for a while. We do have a clip.
yeah, yeah. Let's watch this clip, and I'll just set it up. This is the opening of the film that we're gonna watch. This is the prologue, and I think it'll be very familiar you'll definitely see some allusions here, and so let's just play it, and then I'll explain, or I'll add some commentary afterwards about what we were doing.
Alrighty.
Make sure you get the sound in.
Yep, sounds in. Thank you for that. I often forget that.
The world is changed. I feel it in the water. I feel it in the earth. I smell it in the air. Much that once was is lost. I come now to the very brink where hope and despair are akin, and I know I must choose.
All right, there's the prologue.
And there you go.
There it is.
So, and of course, in the opening, it's not a question of how many Tolkien references are you making. It's a question of what percentage of the dial of the of the voiceover so far is not directly from Tolkien. And in the opening, it's I love how you are kind of taking taking those different quotations and just kind of putting them together. It's not, you're not, especially there in the beginning, the writing is, the script is very, how do I want to say, restraint, I think is what I want to say. Like, I, as it will surprise you, would want to explain stuff, right? But you don't explain stuff, right? You just kind of put those things out there and, let the interaction of the words and the visuals and the juxtaposition of the different quotations just kind of speak there. And I think that that's really interesting.
And that's the beauty of documentary, that you're able to just present these images, like even just this opening bit where it goes into darkness and that's our first shot. So like a flash flare spark of light is actually a first light, not sunlight, not a studio light. It's an actual spark from a tinder and a flint. So it just feels very organic. It feels very like initiating, like this is where we're starting from, especially with that text over top of it. And I thought it was great, some of the storytelling you did when you were talking about, like, I can see it in the air, I can taste it in the air, right. And you can see the wavy lines of the gas being emanated from the factory. And yeah, it's a very accurate visual depiction of what we are hearing as well.
Yeah, when I first got into filmmaking, one of my mentors told me, in the first couple minutes of your film, you have to show viewers how to watch the film.
Yeah.
You really have to show them what kind of film they're about to see. And so what I wanted to do with this is really show, I wanted to take these lines from Tolkien and transform them by placing them here in the real world, the primary world, as a way of saying to viewers what I've been saying to you, which is this film is going to be seeing the world through a mind that has been shaped by Tolkien. And so those opening lines, those are of course the same opening lines of the movies of Peter Jackson's film. In the book, Treebeard says them, but Peter Jackson has Galadriel say them. The world has changed, so on and so forth. And the thing is those words, I always knew that this was the beginning of the film. Mm-hmm. Because especially that first, that the world has changed. That is what this film is about.
Right.
That our world has changed. Peter has seen that change. And so the Lord of the Rings has given him a language to talk about the way the world has changed. Mm-hmm. And so, again, that's like what we're trying to get with that opening prologue. And then there are a whole lot of other things, that we were trying to do. There's the oil tower with the flame at the top. I hope viewers will see that is supposed to be an allusion to the Eye of Sauron, right? Right, obviously.
Though the immediate visual juxtaposition with Peter's campfire struck me as even more powerful, really. I did think of the Eye of Sauron, but I thought of it second. I was first just struck by the juxtaposition between the two.
Yeah, it's not so in your face that it was annoying. It was like, I get it. It was much more situational, environmental.
And I will say, Bradley, I think that your, I'm going to be controversial right now. I think your usage of that quotation is better and more responsible than Peter Jackson's usage of that quotation. I do.
I love that.
I think it's I've always thought it was a weird quote to begin with. To me, made double weird by having Galadriel say it. It's interesting. I can get behind what they're doing, sorta, but it's weird. I've got to kind of twist my brain to try to figure out why are we starting with this? What does that mean exactly? How does it? Anyway, you can do it, but it takes some doing. Here, it fits really organically with what you're describing, right? Especially with the world has changed, but even more than that, by juxtaposing it with the quotation about Tolkien taking the part of trees, you also, if implicitly, you don't explicitly say this, but you implicitly are bringing the quotation close. It was a tree who said it the first time, right? It was Treebeard who said it, and so that experience, what Peter Jackson did by taking those words and putting them into the mouth of an elf. Is to change their context very significantly. I'm not saying it's a horrible, hideous thing that he did, but it changes it quite significantly. Treebeard is speaking in a much more kind of... when you have an elf queen who is saying, the world is changing, I can feel it in the water, right? There's this inevitable sense of distance. Right? From my lofty vantage point as Elf Queen, I can discern that there is change happening around me, right? When Treebeard says it, he's in the world, right? It's his world that's changing. And that's what he's describing, right? He is saying, I know that the world is changing around me, and there's nothing I can do about it, right? And that's... So... I love that context. I love the way in which that context works as the opening of your film, and the way that it captures, again, thinking about this as a way of capturing Peter's perspective, from his experience as a ranger and just living in Alaska, right? As a person who lives in Alaska. That's much closer to Treebeard's experience, right? Than Galadriel is to that kind of experience. So I really love how that worked, and it's a wonderful illustration of that. You're doing there direct adaptation, the words of the film are the words of the book, and yet you're not depicting the book. As you say, the juxtaposition with the primary, you're taking those words and you're placing within the primary world. That's what we're seeing. We're seeing the primary world. We're seeing, we're seeing the trees, the mountains, the owl, the pipeline, right? And
so instead of book to film, we're going from book to real life.
And
book
to film about real life, which is which is the trick, right?
It goes. There's so many ways it can go, and it's and what we're really, documentary. I think transformation is the word we use more than adaptation. Partly is legally, we have to say it's
right.
But I mean it too, in that, like, by taking the words and now putting them in the real world, in the primary world, we are transforming them in a new, and we're adding something to them. And then we also we put two quotes together, because we go through that initial quote, but then we have Peter says, "I come now to the very brink where hope and despair are kin," and that is adapted from Aragorn's lines toward the end. It's not in the movie, it's just in the books, and it's when they're deciding what they're going to do to face Sauron going into Mordor, and they're kind of discussing with Gandalf, and Aragorn says, "We come now to the very brink where hope and despair are akin. To waver is to choose." We changed that a little bit, but again, we're transforming it because a big part of what the film is a search for hope.
Yeah.
And like I said, going back to the very first day I met Peter, that's why he was taking the class, the Tolkien class, was he is on this search, and like, what does Tolkien have to say to us about hope, and what can I do with that in the primary world when it comes to climate change? And we talked a lot from the time we started working on this and brainstorming all the way up until the narration. What is hope, and how do we deal with the competing feelings of hope and despair? And so, that line from Aragorn just felt so right there, and it all seemed to go well together, and it transforms it,
And it's so fascinating because, of course, that one in its context, right? About where hope and despair are akin. To waver is to fall, right? When Aragorn speaks that, it's a pre-battle speech, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a pep talk that he is giving. He's talking about, like, resolution against whatever, in the face of whatever comes, right? So it isn't just about, for him in that moment, it's not just about hope. It's about determination, right? It's about resolve.
Yes.
But that's very much muted in the film content. It's almost like, because it pauses halfway through, in a sense, halfway through the quotation. Like, it doesn't get all the way through to, like, to waver is to fall, right?
Yeah, we don't have that part. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's almost like it leaves it, like, unresolved, like a question. Like,
yes,
are we going to finish the quotation that way, or are we not, right? And that's the drama of the film, right? How are we going to face it?
I love that you're getting all the things I wanted to do. That's great, yes. Because then at the end of the film, we do come back to it, like very intentionally at the end. So viewers will have to see the end to find out what happens.
Yeah.
Well, that leads me to my next question. What is your lifespan for this film? What are you hoping for it to do next? And obviously your students are going to benefit for years to come with the discussions and examples you'll be able to show them. But I'm hoping this gets a festival life.
Yes. So thanks for asking. Yes. We have our premiere next month at a festival called Chagrin Documentary Festival. It's a great festival in the Cleveland area. And we are hoping for some more. We're just waiting to hear from other festivals as well as some Moots. I'm hoping to do some screenings at some Moots over the next few months, and really just over the next, I'd say, 7 or 8 months, take it to as many festivals and Moots as possible. And then after that, hopefully we'll plan also is to be talking to some distributors in the next few months, and so that sometime, hopefully late spring, it could be available on various platforms for the world to see. That's what we're hoping. So I'll tell you one small thing that viewers could do, to viewers of this podcast could do, or listeners, to help. And this is so easy it'll seem trivial, but I promise it's not. Is if you would go on to IMDb and add and look up Ranger of the North. It might be hard to find Ranger of the North, but you can look up me if you can't find Ranger of the North, and that'll take you to Ranger of the North. Find Ranger of the North and add it to your watch list. So you have to log in, but if you have an Amazon account, you can log in IMDb because Amazon owns IMDb because they own everything. But anyways, if you add it to your watch list, and the reason this helps is because distributors and platforms and streaming services, they pay attention to what films people are showing an interest in. And then once, the second part of this is if you do see the film at a Moot or a festival, then give us a good rating. Again, because the platforms, the streamers, the distributors, they pay attention to all this. So if over the next few months we can get 1,000+ people to give us a good rating, to put it on their watch list, like it's gonna trigger some data behind scenes that will get the platforms and streamers interested in the film, and then we can get it out to as many people as possible. So that's the goal, and that's what we're going to be working on. And then ultimately, I guess I'll use that to then like seg into the next thing is we want to keep making similar films. We want to, I think we're on to something in combining nature and Tolkien. And so we have some ideas about like just kind of I've been curious. I've had this question that's been kind of driving me is like Lord of the Rings is this epic adventure, this epic journey. Like, what would it look like to actually take parts of that journey and explore them in the real world? Mm-hmm. All right, so for example, the 10-day river journey that they take between Lothlorien and the breaking of the Fellowship. What does it really take to spend 10 days on a river? Right. Let's go out in the wilderness and see. Things like that. We're interested in doing similar films, so hopefully I'm hoping this film will create opportunities to explore other similar connections between Tolkien and the wilderness, Tolkien and nature. That's what we're hoping. So
I think we might have a conversation at some point about work in progress things on Collaboratory. So
yeah.
I'll ping you later about that.
Yeah, awesome. Definitely. But so bottom line is, you can go to our web. You can go to my production company is Green Hero Films. You can sign up for updates on the film on my website. Again, it's greenherofilms.com. And then look for screenings at Moots coming up or festivals near you. And because any film is better in person. If you can see the film in person, that's where you should see it. And then we can hang out also, and we can chat about it and nerd out over all the Tolkien allusions and references and that kind of thing. So yeah, check us out there, and I'm looking forward to hanging out with people and talking about the film.
It would be fun at multiple Moots if you get to end up playing a game. I'm not saying a drinking game, but like when you see the illusion, you have to see how many you can get. Who got 13, who got 37, who got all 50. Yeah.
And if folks do want to make it a drinking game, we'll do that too, Yeah. But whatever, some kind of game. I love that. Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for coming on, Bradley. Really appreciate it. It's just so fun to talk to a creator who's actually doing the work and inspired by something. So, it was just such a beautiful film. Like the cinematography is just incredible. So,
and I'm really glad to get a chance to, because one thing we haven't talked about much at all in Other Minds and Hands is documentary, right? No. And thinking about the kinds of creative filmmaking and the kinds of adaptation. It's just the kind of analysis that goes into making a documentary. It's something, as you've said, I think this is true of nonfiction in general, right? People who write nonfiction, people who make nonfiction films. I think that I don't think most people would actually say this, like if they thought about it enough to actually formulate the sentence, they'd probably, but I think that many people just kind of assume that nonfiction things just kind of happen, right? Like it's just, like obviously
you just hold the camera up and shoot, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like you're just talking to people or whatever, like it's, but like nonfiction doesn't just it doesn't just happen, right? I mean, it is very much a work of subcreation, a work of art, and and thinking about what is going into that is really it's it's fun and important to think about.
I was thinking about this ironically the other day because we have a video coming out in the next couple weeks that Corey did where he's doing a deep dive prop analysis of a Weta prop from Peter Jackson's trilogy and comparing that to the extended edition, DVD special features that we all know so well. I think it'd be really fun to do kind of like a comparison of like your special feature versus Peter Jackson's special feature. What are you guys trying to do? How are you trying to do it? Because that is a documentary.
It's a documentary,
it is a small spec documentary, but it is,
Yeah, I love that. Let's do it. Yeah.
On it.
Yeah.
We just have to finish it first. Details.
Exactly. That's it. Easy.
Yeah. Nearly there.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much. This has been great. It's really fun chatting with y'all. It's great. It's great to hear that, like I said earlier, that people are seeing what we were trying to do with the film, and again, I'm looking forward to showing it to more Tolkien fans and others, and it'll be a fun journey over the next few months.
Phenomenal.
I can't wait to hear how it goes.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah, exactly. I think we're going to be. Are we going to get to see it at Euromoot?
Are you coming to Euromoot?
Euromoot. Oh, I guess we could do Euromoot. Yeah,
Euromoot.
Challenge.
Corey and I are there
both
and doing
gonna
an
be
adaptation workshop.
Well, let's do it. Yeah. Let's do it. I submitted to New England Moot and Ranger Moot. But if you want me to, if you want to do Euromoot, I'm in. Yeah.
The programmers are currently panicking. We'll give them a shout.
Exactly. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. Let me know. Sounds great. Cool.
That'd be great.
Awesome.
That'd be great.
Well, thank you so
right.
much for joining us, Bradley. We'll talk to you again soon.
Y'all have fun. Thanks so much.
Good.
Okay,
Take
very
care.
good. Bye.
See you, Bradley. That's an excellent segue to what we need to continue talking about with Euromoot. So, hey.
Exactly. Yeah, we're thinking about Euromoot because we had so much fun doing the storyboarding workshop last time, or at least my weird in-depth version of the storyboarding project.
I didn't save the sheets. I 100% should have, but just the conversation, I think, absolutely was a prime example of what I love about adaptation. Of just like, you spiraled in 19 different directions about how important each decision was, and you're like, yes, exactly.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, just I'm eager to kind of return to it for a moment to kind of reflect on it a little bit more, because of course we got so caught up in it. I was like 20 minutes after our normal ending time
and we
before
had no
we even
idea.
realized.
20 minutes
so we just
after.
kind of had to cut off and be like, oops, sorry, bye now.
Right. We didn't really get the debrief side of it.
Exactly. So debriefing on that a little bit again, it's so, as soon as you open that door, and the door, I mean, the door of thinking about it yourself, the door of doing adaptation yourself. And of course, like, I have opened that door myself. And I mean, like, my film project is all about that, right? About like doing the planning for an adaptation. And so I've already, just from that process, learned so much. But the thing about storyboarding is when you actually think about, even in film, not only am I not thinking about it like shot by shot, I'm barely thinking about it scene by scene, right? Like I'm big picture, right? We're kind of planning like, what is the whole show and how is the show going to go, and what thing, like there are lots of decisions that we're making, but they're like big picture decisions. How are we going to depict this person? How's the plot going to go? How are we going to shape the story, and how are we going to,
But that's so important. I mean, that's world building.
Yeah.
It's the next step would then be saying, okay, so we've talked about how we're going to show that character, what that kind of character is going to be like. How are we going to do that visually? Like, where are we going to put them in the shot? What's going to be in their way? How are they going to be lit?
Yes.
All that other stuff that helps you tell the story.
Exactly. As soon as you take it down to those levels, and the storyboarding really thinking about that as I was going to say frame by frame, but that sounds a little like it means something different than what I intend by that. But
that's right.
Shot by shot, frame by frame, it is. It really compels you. It drew my attention so much to how many things you just take for granted. There are some things, like when you're watching a film, there are some things that might jump out to you, like, oh, that's really interesting, or like, but like. Everything that you see on screen is something that like they've made particular decisions about, right? Like I remember I think I've told this story before, but it's just, again, kind of like hitting me again. I remember the story that a colleague of mine once told. He was very interested in film stuff, and a film had once come to shoot at their university, and there was a professor's office that they were filming in. And so of course they wanted it to, and they were using it like in the film, it was going to be a professor's office. And in real life, it was an actual professor's office. Right. But what they did in setting up the scene was they removed all of the professor's books off the wall and replaced them with entirely different books. And I mean, like, it was like, so like because they were like, they had particular choices like that they were making, like they had a particular vision, even with things like the color palette of the background, they wanted to be able to control. Right.
They also probably had to have the rights to have those books on screen.
There are those legal questions too. Yeah, exactly. But it's like, so instead of just being like, oh, this is a nice authentic professor room, like let's just
dress it.
Everything in the room was like specifically changed over to anyway. So it is like, it's just everything that you see. Like I might think, for instance, about even when I think back to, close readings that we have done of the Rings of Power and Rings and Realms, over the last couple years. But there's so many things that I'm not thinking about, right? Choices that they have made. Like I'm not thinking about.
One, we don't have the time.
No, we don't have the time, right?
But like, it's fun to like think back of just what we're doing now to like the stuff that I did. Because when you were doing your scripts, I was doing scene analysis for a very small thing. But like the very small scene that I would do scene analysis for would take me 6 to 7 hours.
Yes.
I'm looking at like a 35-second piece.
Yes.
And you're going through every single shot. And I'm specifically thinking of that one where she was with Adar in the tent, and we have all those Dutch angles.
Yeah, and the light and darkness, and the,
my God, like we just went to town on that one, and it took ages. But like the more you viewed it, the more you saw. The more we played it, the more I got out of it, and it was a lot of fun to see the different ways that people tell these stories. Yeah,
but again, when you put yourself into the position of the filmmaker and you think about like what choices like have to be made, right? So like, I mean, again, going back to that scene, right? Like there are a lot of things I thought about there, but like, okay, there's food on the table in front of her, right? But what food? Like, and why? If bread, why that kind of bread? Yes, exactly. And what order do you put the things in, right? How do you arrange them?
I mean, I feel like, and even if it had been like, it was a chicken closest to her, but the bony part was facing her, that's a choice. Like
that's
that,
a choice.
I would read into that.
Yes.
And sometimes you don't even like, I mean, there's a lot of filmmakers or film studies folks that will do this kind of analysis and read their own ideas into it.
Sure.
It's fine. I understand. That's what happens. The same thing with academics that say, well, clearly she's saying blah, 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 blah. You don't know that. Clearly you are seeing that is happening.
Right.
But clearly she is saying is a different statement.
Right.
But being able to put yourself into that kind of viewpoint where I'm seeing this is telling me this story. The filmmaker might not have meant all of that, but they still had to make a ton of decisions that I'm going to interpret in a certain way. So different interpretations, really cool.
Yeah.
But, there will be certain scenes that I don't know if they did that on purpose. Like Bradley was saying, he didn't know that he had snuck in additional allusions and references and stuff. Like they just get in there.
Yes.
So
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, exactly. In film as in books, like it's I used to, when I was younger, I used to be very resistant to the idea of the death of the author. Like when people would start talking about the death of the author, I was highly resistant. And the reason I was resistant is that I was and remain resistant to the idea of like meaninglessness, right? Like nothing has any particular meaning, everything, that I still disbelieve, right? But the reason I'm much more comfortable, like I would not say, I might have said once a long time ago that like, no, the author's intention is what really matters. I no longer think that. Not because I think that there's no meaning, but because I think the author themselves only have access to some of the meaning, right? Like it's because it's more than just about the author. And that's why, again, as just as you were pointing out, Bradley can watch his own film back and be like, oh wait, I'm now seeing things that I didn't see before, right?
Totally. Well,
And
and like what a
yeah,
great example is Tolkien that, the decades and decades later, we're still seeing really applicable things from works that were written, so long ago that timeless. He didn't have that intention. Tolkien
right.
didn't mean for us to look at this in a modern context, but here we are with it still
Yes.
making a lot of sense.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Um, yeah. No. So it's interesting stuff. But as you say, so anyway, but that's just going back to what you were saying about the thought that people put into it, but then also the interpretation of that. And I do think it is important to keep those lines clear, like when you're, not to always be ascribing intention, like you're interpreting something, right? You're seeing a meaning in that, and that's fine. Like that's, if you can clearly root that and make a cogent argument for how that, that reading is rooted in the text, then that's great. You shouldn't, in fact, be making assumptions that like that was the intended meaning, right? That your meaning is the intended meaning of this, of the thing. But yes, even when there's not, who knows even what motivates all of the choices, right? And that's another thing that I was
Totally.
reflecting on when I was thinking about our Tom Bombadil exercise last week, right? There were some times when I wanted to make particular choices for one reason, one kind of reason, and other times when I was wanting to make choices for a completely different kind of reason. That is, let me give an example. So I wanted to have like the camera following Frodo's hands, right, going to his pocket to pull out the ring and stuff, because I wanted to raise the question of volition and will and point of view, right? Like the question of like control over Frodo's will and the influence on Frodo's will. This is an important element in the story. And to try to capture that through the point of view of the camera. So I'm making camera angle choices, right, based upon my desire to sort of show or tell a particular
Which is exactly how it should be done. I mean, camera is our eyeball. It is such a godlike thing that one, we have the power to see whatever that camera shows us. We are godlike, but the camera is the one that decides what to show us.
Right.
So it is godlike because we're getting a very limited perspective. So giving us that shot where we're just looking at Frodo's hand on the ring, really powerful because it's making me question who, how, why, all
Yes.
these big questions.
Yeah. But then there were other times when I was motivated, like my choice motivation was more purely like thematic or concept based, right? Or even kind of like when I'm thinking about the visual spacing, right? How I wanted to show Frodo on his stool with the other three hobbits on one side and Tom Bombadil on the other side and some space in between, right? To sort of show the kind of the position that Frodo is put in. Thinking about that in this sort of larger thematic context and stuff. And of course, like this is just me making decisions and being a dork about the things that I enjoy being a dork about. There are lots of other times when people can be making decisions based on things like other aesthetic choices, right?
Well, and similarly, I was going to
For
say, like,
instance.
and it was also just you. Like, I was asking some questions, but really just for clarity so I could figure out which stick figure to draw.
Yeah.
Like, you were making all those decisions. Imagine a writer's room with a dozen writers and two showrunners and five directors,
Yes.
all trying to see the same vision.
Yeah.
And that's why, like, I use the example of Marvel versus DC all the time because, like, Marvel had the same situation, a ton of writers' rooms, a ton of directors, but a singular vision across the whole of 21 films that they had a really core, tight vision of how that arc was going to happen. Whereas DC was super piecemeal and it didn't have the same, it had more of a lots of cooks in the kitchen kind of vibe. So being able to have that kind of creative control over the story that you want to tell, you're not always going to get that,
Right.
So you did. Congratulations. It's
Yeah.
a singular director.
Yeah. 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 No. So it is.
And then,
Interesting.
sorry,
Yeah,
I'm
no,
off
go
again.
ahead, go ahead.
And there's also like, you're going through the thought process of how to tell the story and how to depict something. Then there's also some like really practical elements that need to be in place that if those practical elements aren't there, it like negates your entire work as a filmmaker. If you break the fourth wall, if you change the perspective without letting the audience understand where you're moving. If you're suddenly here and then you're suddenly there, it doesn't work. That breaks the rules of what cinematography is. So that takes us out of the narrative. We're immediately judging the film and going, oh, you did that wrong,
Right.
as opposed to getting immersed in the story. So you have all these decisions about how to tell the story, but then you also have these like required elements to give us the perspective of where everyone is standing in the room. If you break fourth wall, if you do one of those things, it could be a really strong tool to help you tell the story. But if you do it at the wrong time, in the wrong way, or accidentally, it's an absolute detriment to what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
I'm thinking to that moment in Rings of Power where Anatar becomes Anatar with Celebrimbor, and we have this back and forth in their conversation, and all of a sudden the camera spins and they're in different positions. So they had been on stage left and stage right, and then they pivoted and they were in different spots. And it was because he had switched and his allegiance was now on the other side. It's like, that was a super awesome shot to be like, whoa, now I'm seeing it from over here.
Yes.
And I didn't realize that's what I was being shown, but now I see that's what I'm being shown.
Right.
But if you did that by accident, you're breaking rules. It doesn't make sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Just like the Dutch angles too, which also are kind of breaking rules, right? Or not rules, but what you don't expect to be seeing things at an angle like that. Yeah. And so, and yeah, I get, yeah. No, again, it's really interesting. So of course, a lot of those kinds of choices, I wasn't thinking about, right, when I was doing that, but it would, that's sort of part of the collaborative process. But yeah, just the sensitivity to the number of decisions to be being made, and the significance of those decisions. It really is. It's such an eye-opening exercise, really.
Yeah.
It makes me think of another. So I have I think I'm going to do it at Euromoot actually, in a couple weeks. A thing that I have taken to doing at Moot's my random text discussion game, where I have this whole matrix by which we can randomly, I roll dice and we can randomly roll a paragraph in the Lord of the Rings or two paragraphs in the Lord of the Rings and compare and contrast them. And so I don't know what we're going to discuss. I'm like, let's choose a random paragraph and discuss it. So that's what I do. Or I could do other things besides Lord of the Rings too. But anyway, so I'm going to be doing my random text discussion game at Euromoot. It strikes me that it would be really interesting to do a similar thing with adaptation. Just randomly roll
Pick a scene.
Yeah.
That was one of the questions I was going to ask you. Of like, so you guys know we're doing this adaptation workshop at Euromoot, but like we don't have 3 hours to do it like we do over 2 episodes of Other Minds and Hands. We have like an hour,
Right.
Which is totally doable. I mean, I did it at Oxamoot in 50 minutes and it was great. But I have these 4 or 5 passages. We could take a look at them ahead of time. We can make the slide. But I kind of love the idea that nobody in the room knows which scene we're going to be adapting. So we're all on the same page, literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
I think that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. It's kind of fun. Especially, and in some ways, especially, I think it would be really interesting. Because, of course, sometimes when I randomly roll, occasionally we'll get really famous passages, which are like really cool to think about.
Yeah.
Sometimes we'll get a totally random line of dialogue in the middle of, a passage you don't normally think about very much. But those are really fun too. Those are really interesting too. And it strikes me that if you were to take any scene in any book and say, like, okay, imagine this is a script for your film. Like you're gonna do you're gonna adapt this to film. What do you do? How do you do it? What does it look like? Give me a storyboard for that. Like that would be.
We certainly, I kind of want to like give the audience the power to have like 3 vetoes or something. So if we roll the dice and it's like the wall was gray and stone. Like, yes, there's a lot of different ways we could frame that scene, but if they want to veto that one and try another one, because it is good when there's a little bit of dialogue or a little bit of action, just because it makes you think about all the things you and I have been doing over the last couple of hours. It just makes you work a little bit harder in terms of adaptation thinking. Maybe we give them three vetoes.
Yeah. So anyway, we'll see how we figure to do that together. But I think it would be really great. I mean, I love your like the way that you normally do your storyboard workshop, like when you have like everybody doing their own thing or getting into small groups and doing them together. But I'm really kind of itching to do more like we did last week.
Well, we
to
did
do a
two
group
docs
discussion. Yeah.
Yeah, the first one was a group, and that was awesome,
Yeah.
you know, and then we split into the individuals, and some of them paired off, so there'd be like 2 or 3 of them working on one scene, and that was great too,
Yeah.
because that also gave us, so like, I think starting it as a group and having one passage where they see what we're talking about, like how you're working through it, it's like boot camp, but also an excellent exercise.
Yeah.
And then when they go off to try it their own, they're a little bit more confident, and you see some interesting stuff. But if you don't have time for the second one, we've already done this incredible group thing together.
Yeah.
So we could decide on the day, like, we're having way too much fun with the group thing. Let's just do it. And then if there's a lag, then we'll throw in the, okay, you're going to try it on your own now.
Yeah. And it would be especially fun if we can find an artist or two in the room whom we could,
That'd be lovely.
you know, call up to like
Actually storyboard.
actually do some drawing for us while we discuss and talk about it. Yeah, that'd be really fun.
It is fun to have at least 2 at some point, though. So you're taking the same scene and seeing it, it you know, multiple ways in the same moment. That's
Yeah.
just kind of a cool natural phenomenon.
Yeah, it strikes me that it would be a really fun moot. Like we could do like a whole day regional moot
Oh, easily.
on like a scene, like to storyboard a whole scene, like an entire.
Especially if it's one that hasn't been done, you know, if there's unfinished tales or, you know, somewhere else that we can pull from.
Yeah.
It would be lovely if it was something that we all knew, but we hadn't seen.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. No, and that's easy to do.
Next year.
That's easy to do.
Next year.
Yeah. Next year. Next year. But yeah, no, it would be because you could have so many different discussions, thinking about all of the different angles if you had enough time. We could have we could split the mood up into different teams. There could be like the cinematography team and the the script writing team, and
Costume and props
costume and
team.
props team. Yeah, yeah.
That would be fun. Well, and then like Peter Jackson did, he then took the storyboards and animated them together with music and dialogue over top of it. Then we get some of our actor crew in the Signum family to voice it. That would be fun.
It would be fun. It would be
Yeah.
fun. Yeah, no, that would be neat. I have a scene a Lord of the Rings scene off the top of my head that would be really fun to do. The final confrontation with Saruman at Bag End at the end of the Scouring of the Shire.
Ooh, yes, that would.
Wormtongue coming out, and also like
And would also facilitate a really good conversation of like, why wasn't this in it?
yeah,
What do we
the whole
the
scene from like
conversation
them
were?
approaching Bag End, going up the hill to Bag End, through to like Wormtongue's death, basically. Wormtongue being shot with arrows. That'd be a really, really interesting scene to do.
Yes, it
Dialogue,
would.
action,
Okay,
setting.
so New England Moot 2026. We'll put a little marker there.
Yeah, it'd be cool. It'd be cool.
That would be pretty cool. Okay. On board. Right. So next week.
So if we did it at New England Moot, then we could
Studio
use the
Lab.
studio robot to actually illustrate camera angles.
Literally. And we could break into different teams, into different production rooms, and everybody could focus on whatever that room was. Oh, you're in the music room? Go compose something.
Right. It's true. It's true. A whole suite, whole facility there. Yeah.
Oh man, that would be fun. I'd want to film the whole thing as a documentary film crew too, of just like walking around of like see what's going on in here and see the ideas that are happening.
Yep.
That would be fun.
It'd be awesome.
Right.
Well, we are just about done. We're a few minutes early this week, but I think that is only fair considering we went over last week.
That's all right. But
Also, we wanted to acknowledge we weren't quite prepared. We had already made arrangements to have Bradley visit us today to talk about the film before the little teaser videos for season 3 of like I was surprised to discover like actual content released by Prime
I didn't
Video
even know it had come out.
for
Corey
season
told
3.
me.
Yeah.
I was like, while we were talking, I had a message from one of our Tolkien contacts that they're working on getting the footage, so we'll be better prepared next week. But
It'd
we
be
will
interesting.
probably
Just there'll be
discussing it.
something to talk about there, just to kind of see, and it'll be fun to get back into, just 'cause thinking about season 3 and
Yeah.
what they are reviewing about season 3 and what we can conclude, what we can see from where we left off in season 2 and everything. The Rings of Power is always so interesting to talk about. Not only just like intrinsically is it interesting to talk about, but just from my own personal experience. Like it's like I spend like weeks of my life almost wholly immersed in it, and then go months doing other things. Right?
Right.
Then I'm like, okay, now I got to do other stuff. And
Did you see the cogs of my brain turning when I was like, Anatar and
yes,
Celebrimbor
exactly.
in
Right.
that
I'm remembering.
chamber?
Yes, I'm remembering.
Yeah, I mean, we like lived and breathed it, and now you have to like brush the cobwebs off and remember what was going on. But
Yeah.
and we will go back to Pride and Prejudice planning, probably the week after that, maybe the week after. But we want to make sure we get some Tolkien content in here as well. 'Cause there's stuff going on.
Exactly. Yeah, and so JJ, there aren't full teaser trailers yet. These are just little
Sneak peeks.
little sneak peek things. But
Not, I wouldn't even call them teasers. They're like
yeah,
behind the scenes teasers.
sort of. Yeah, it's I don't know what these kinds of things are called, but they're little short videos which point to sort of what is happening and the kinds of things that they're doing and thinking about for season 3. So we will return to that and maybe have a look at those and think those through a little bit next time, and it'd be a good occasion to kind of recap and think about season 3 again and where we're kind of headed and what we might expect.
That sounds pretty great.
Very good. Very good. And so don't forget, check it out. Go to IMDb, check out Ranger of the North, add it to your wish list to do them a favor, help get them some more visibility, and hopefully we'll get a chance. You get a chance to see it at one of our moots coming up if you attend one of our Signum moots, virtually or in person, and there will be other opportunities to view the film. So
Yeah.
thanks very much, everybody. And thanks again to Bradley for joining us to talk about Ranger of the North. And we will be back next week. Bye, everybody.
Take care.